Hello, Internet. This is Sharif Awad from Ontario International Film Festival. Today we are organizing our second panel in the festival. It is about music licensing and how to license music without paying royalties. I am very happy to welcome Mr. Michael Laskow from Taxi. He's the CEO and the founder. And also music composers Matthew VanderBoegh and Michael Kruk. How are you, everybody?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having us, Sharif.
Thank you very much for joining us live. I would like to begin with Michael Laskow, and I want to ask him about himself and his company and what kind of music service does it provide for filmmakers?
Okay, great. The company is called Taxi. You can find it at taxi.com. And we've been in business for 28 years, helping independent songwriters, artists, and composers get their music to filmmakers, TV producers, record companies, and music publishers. Did you want me to elaborate on that, or should I?
Yes, for sure. Yes, okay. Yes, especially for filmmakers, young filmmakers, independent filmmakers. What can the company provide?
So the filmmakers can actually email us and tell us, this is the kind of music I'm looking for my film. And we then put the word out to thousands of composers all over the world, songwriters as well, and bands and artists. And we don't disclose who the filmmaker is or what the film is, but we might say something like looking for melancholy singer-songwriter songs that would be good for an after funeral scene in a movie. And all those songwriters would submit their material to Taxi. We pre-screen it looking for the material that is over the quality bar and on target for what the filmmaker needs. And then we send that material to the filmmaker after it's been curated, and they decide what they want. And then once they decide what they want, they can contact the songwriter or the artist or composer directly and work out their deal. But it's important to note that it is royalty-free, but we'll talk more about royalty-free later. So it's a great way for indie filmmakers that are working on a budget to find really high-quality music without paying a lot of money for it.
Great. Michael, right now I've been reviewing your website and your Internet Movie Database filmography. You've been working on all type of production. Right now, our film festival mostly include from all over the world and Canada independent production, and also some student films from the international scene and from Canada. And of course, all of these productions, present, like the future of filmmaking. All of them are youngcomers or already established filmmakers who are maybe will get some challenges, in finding music for their content. Tell me on how many level you work with filmmakers, to collaborate with them to create a new soundtrack.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the kind of music that I write and deal with is not so much songs, but is like instrumental, what they call underscore music. And the majority of my work would be documentaries. I work a lot with BBC and some very good documentary makers. And I think that, it's always a collaboration, working, a composer working with a filmmaker. And I think that in some of the best collaborations I've had, there's been really good communication from the beginning, and the filmmakers have had a very clear vision about what kind of film they're making. They might be thinking already that they have an idea of what angle the music could go down. But often some of the most interesting projects are where there's time for me as a composer and the filmmaker to talk and exchange ideas, and maybe exchange I can write some music ahead of time and we can work out the angle that the music will take. Because I think often some of the best, I guess like anything in filmmaking, the collaboration between the composer and the filmmakers can make something that's greater than the whole, and bring some fresh ideas into a new film.
Yes. Matt, can you tell us a little bit about any speciality you provide? I mean, soundtrack for feature web series, because also I've seen you work, on different collaboration with television, cinema, etc.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit different than than kind of what we're describing so far, in that I typically write kind of this pre-packaged called instrumental cues. It's pieces of music that are ready to go, so they're already like totally composed and they're just drag and drop ready, so that an editor, whoever's putting a film together, can just take these pre-packaged pieces of music and just drop them in to their video production, and they can chop them up and do whatever they want to with them. So I don't typically deal much with scoring music, so I don't write music to a picture. I write music in advance, never knowing where it's going to wind up, and hopefully it all winds up somewhere at some point.
Yes. And Michael, right now, Mr. Laskow, right now, if I am like a filmmaker who has a short film or like a web series, and I have like some ideas, about what kind of music I would like to put, what kind of songs I want to license, what are the challenges that I could face budget-wise regarding royalties or rights, and what kind of consultancy can you provide to me through your company?
So I'm really glad you asked that question, Sharif, because so many independent filmmakers that I meet use royalty-free production music libraries. And there are some that are very good, some that are not so good, and some that are not very good at all, frankly. I guess it's like any business. But people flock to these royalty-free libraries because independent filmmakers have this misconception that when their film comes out, that once a month, they're going to have to start writing royalty checks to the composers, which they don't. The royalties are actually performance royalties, commonly referred to as a PRO, Performing Rights Organization. In America, it's ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. In Canada, it's SOCAN. And those performing rights organizations, if there are any performance royalties generated, those organizations actually do the licensing and do the payouts, so the filmmakers don't have to. A good example would be you make an independent film, it ends up on the independent film channel on your cable network, so that would generate performance royalties. So filmmakers are really surprisingly uninformed about this, and they really believe that they have to pay the royalties, which they don't. The independent film channel pays a blanket royalty every year to the performing rights organization, and then from that they proportionately dole out the money to the musicians who should get those royalties. So I think my main point is that I don't want independent filmmakers to be trapped into thinking that they can only use music from royalty-free libraries. You could use music from Matt VanderBoegh or from Michael Kruk, or from Taxi members. There are a bunch of places where you can get music, and you'll probably find better music than you will in at least some, if not many, of the royalty-free libraries. And you can tailor it more to what you need by simply, if in Taxi's case, the filmmaker can say, I really love this song by the Rolling Stones, but obviously a Rolling Stone song might cost $500,000 or something to license in a movie. but they can reach out to us and say, so I love the song Miss You by the Rolling Stones. I know I can't afford it. Can you find me something like that? So we would find something maybe at a similar tempo and a similar guitar sound, but something that doesn't impinge the copyright, you know, so it's not going to rip off the song. It's not going to have a similar melody or anything else. It's just going to feel similar in the beat and the general makeup of it. And we can present the filmmaker with several options, and then they pick the one that works best against picture. And it might cost them, you know, $250 up to a couple $1,000 rather than $500,000.
Yes. Michael, do you think right now, between filmmaker and music composers, you can collaborate online? I mean, because of the lockdown and the current circumstances of traveling, like if you can be provided like a script or scenes from already photographed film or footage, you can start to work on you know, an assignment of music for a documentary, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously now more than ever, that's something that's very relevant. But I mean, I live in New York, and I've been working mainly with production companies based in the UK. So I've done several series where I've never met the people in person that I'm working with. We'll do a Zoom call. There'll be a lot of emails going back and forward. What's quite common is that I'll get some concepts ahead of time, as I mentioned, and write some music ahead. Script is always very useful ahead of time. And then sometimes as parts of the film are edited, even if it's just a rough edit, that will get sent through to me, and I'll try and score something to that, send it back, see if it's the kind of thing that the filmmakers like, or if they see it going in a different direction. And I think a lot of composers are very open and friendly and welcoming to that. And especially if the filmmakers make it clear at the beginning, it's really good as a composer if someone says to you, hey, look, this isn't the actual final locked cut that we're getting. This is just a rough cut. It's a rough idea. Can we have something that you're thinking along those lines? So as a composer, I know that I am not going to spend a huge amount of hours tweaking every tiny little production element to make it amazing. I will do that at the end, but for those smaller parts of the film that are in the edit, we can go back and forward, sending files, you know, often use a Dropbox or something like that. And composers have the capacity as well to sync music within our software too. So we can, if the filmmakers are in a hurry, we can also give them something synced up and a standalone as well, and they can work from that.
Yes. Matt, right now, among this, your work does like composing music score for trailers, let's say. You know, in the old days, I remember a lot of big composers used to compose like teaser trailer or longer trailer. Does this interest you? Do you like to collaborate on such level, you know, with new outings?
Well, trailer music is really its own animal, and there's so many intricacies to that particular style of music, and it's way beyond anything that I've ever done. And so I don't do much trailer music. I'm fascinated by the style, and I love what people can do with that, but it's just never been something that I've focused on. So I don't really have a whole lot of experience there.
Yes.
But real quick, Sharif, I wanted to go back, if you don't mind, and jump on something Michael Laskow said about
Sure.
royalty-free libraries, just because my brother and his girlfriend are independent filmmakers here where I live as well, and they know a lot of people in our local film community, and it seems like so many of them always gravitate towards the royalty-free sites, and there's a million royalty-free sites that all have a million pieces of music, and that's just such a risky proposition for filmmakers to go that route, because so many of these royalty-free places are just like, it's open season for composers. Like, there's no quality control. You just upload stuff and it's automatically accepted into the system, and it populates these huge musical databases, which means some like 12-year-old kid who just got his first MacBook and has GarageBand and like clinks a few notes with a fake accordion sound, like they can take that piece of music and it's instantly accepted into a royalty-free catalog. And then these independent filmmakers go to these places and they're trying to find the perfect piece of music, and they got to sift through thousands and thousands of oh man, I don't want to sound demeaning here, but just stuff that's not good in order to find that diamond in the rough. And there are amazing pieces of music in the royalty-free catalogs, but to find it is it's a monumental chore. And I've heard stories from so many filmmakers that they just eventually throw their hands up in the air because they can't find anything good in those places. So as independent filmmakers, I really think that one of the best things you can do is go to a company like Taxi and tell them what you're looking for, and see if Taxi can help find music from someone who does this for a living. The cost is not going to be much higher. It might even be cheaper, because I think a lot of the people that run royalty-free stuff can populate their own price tag on things, and they don't know what the market charges. They're like, oh, $1,000. And it's like they're just throwing arbitrary price tags out because they don't know. And I think a lot of times independent filmmakers they're getting scammed. I mean, not scammed, but they're just getting fleeced by people who don't know better, who are making some inferior quality sounds. And there's just better options out there. So anyways, not Vince, I'll get off that soapbox, but I just thought I'd jump in on that.
Michael, if I'm like a filmmaker and I live overseas, I'm looking for non-English content. Is it easy for you to provide me as well, like service, suggest title from other countries rather than the US, the UK, or Canada, and non-English content for me to use in my new production?
Yes, absolutely. Ironically, we've got a production music library from the Middle East that uses Taxi to find Middle Eastern music. And most of the Middle Eastern music that they're signing is coming from American composers, which I find ironic. But obviously it meets the quality and the stylistic bar that the company needs. But yes, we have music that literally from anywhere in the world. I mean, we had music, I believe it's called Romani, that is kind of like gypsy music, was a request that we had recently. We regularly get requests for music with Spanish lyrics, all forms of Latin music, French. And we also do a lot of instrumental music, which obviously, the instrumentation would vary and the scales vary from country to country. And if I can add something to give a little plug to both Michael and Matt, there's a big difference between being an independent filmmaker and reaching out to a friend of yours says, oh, dude, let me do the music for your film. They're well-intentioned and they may be great musicians. They may have great songs or great instrumental stuff, but they don't understand things like timing. They don't understand the arc of a piece of music, how it should build in intensity and make it, have its own momentum that makes a scene feel like it's going somewhere. They wouldn't know how to create music that's easily editable for a scene. So that's the difference between working with a professional composer and working with somebody who, like Matt said, just, took an accordion piece of music and uploaded it to a royalty-free library, or a well-meaning friend that says, dude, let me add some music to your film. So I think that filmmakers at all levels need to understand that there are professionals out there that are talented and affordable that they're just not aware of.
Yes. And Michael, right now, what are the option you provide as a music composer for filmmakers? I mean, there are a production that can use, a large number of orchestra. Sometimes a production cannot afford to have like a group of musicians. So how can you work on that, with filmmakers who have, different financial capabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, many composers, certainly people like Matt and myself, have invested a lot of money in music sample libraries. So this will be the instruments that sit on our computer that they basically emulate live instruments. And nowadays the sound of these samples are really amazing. So if you have people who know what they're doing with those sounds, there's a very high quality nowadays that you can achieve if your budget doesn't allow musicians. In terms of budget, I think with that kind of thing, sometimes if you have some budget that you could put towards musicians, it really can elevate the music. So that might be something that you speak to your composer about at the beginning, and say to them, look, hey, we've got this much of a budget. Maybe it's just a small budget, but we'd like to put it towards musicians. And then the time usually that how that money is best spent reveals itself is often towards the end of a project, when the composer and the filmmaker have a really good idea about the sound. So, for example, if the score is very reliant on, say, a female vocalist, then the composer might have used the music samples, but we might decide, well, if there's a little budget, let's use that on a real predominant part of the score, or an instrument, or in this case, the female, get a female vocalist in to re-record those. And you can really find that a mixture of these samples together with one or two key live players can make a world of difference to a really beautiful sounding score.
And Matt, what is your advice for musicians who would like to venture into music composing for entertainment production?
My advice for the musicians is just to this is going to sound like a plug for Michael Laskow's company, but the best thing, this is not an advertorial, I swear. But the best thing a composer can do really is to join Taxi. That's how I got my start. That's how I learned the business, was by joining Michael's company. And it's a really great service. It's a great way for people to learn the ropes. And I apologize if that sounds like a shameless plug, but that's really the best thing people can do. Some other avenues that people can go through is, if you really want to film or score music for film, is go to the film festivals. There's little small local festivals in nearly every community, probably in the world. But I know just in my little area, and I don't live in a very big place, there seems to be like a new film contest or a new festival happening, gosh, at least once a month. So just go to where these people congregate and meet them.
Yes. I have a question here from one of the viewer. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
As a beginner filmmaker, how much might it cost me to get good music for my short film? Is it by track or full track? Will it cost less having a composer for a soundtrack, or the same cost? I suppose Michael Kruk is probably the best guy to answer this, but I'll just take a stab at it really quickly. Sure. It depends on how short you mean by short, and how much of your short film is being populated by music. So like if a short film is 5 minutes long and you want music to cover about 4.5 minutes of that, then you're looking at a different cost than a 20-minute film that has 18 minutes of music, or a 20-minute film that has 2 minutes of music.
Yes. Michael, do you like to add a point to this question?
Yeah, I mean, Matt's absolutely right on what he says there. I mean, a huge consideration is, how many minutes of music do you need? And I'd say two things with this. First of all, don't assume that you either have to have all composed music, like bespoke composed music from a composer, or all library music, or all songs. You can mix these things up. You can get a composer on board and speak to them and say, hey, I just need a couple of minutes here, a couple of minutes there, and that will obviously be like a negotiated thing depending on who you're speaking to. And also there are certain, in terms of cost as well, I know of certain libraries who will charge different amounts based on what your intended usage is. So I've seen it before where a library's gone, hey, you can have this track for this amount if you're intending to, it's not going to be broadcast on network TV, it's not going to go into, cinemas, on a large scale, and that sometimes can be a different price, different cost than if you're making something which is intended to go out across network TV internationally. So I feel I'd love to be able to give you a dollar and cents price. I don't know if any of us can do that, to be honest, but it's about a little bit of research, and you have options. And with the composer element, it's going to depend on who you use, and just, I would say with a composer, find some people you like and talk to them. They're often very friendly people, and put something forward in a nice way. Always try and be fair on people, and you should find, hopefully you can meet in the middle with somebody.
Sure. And Michael, I want you to mention that you have a weekly live show on your YouTube channel. Maybe a lot of our viewers would like to join or see your previous lives.
Sure. It's we do a weekly show called Taxi TV. It's on Mondays at 4 p.m. Pacific time. You can find us by going on YouTube and just searching Taxi Independent A&R. And there you'll see it. We do the show almost every Monday. I may not be doing the show this coming Monday only because I'm getting ready for our annual convention and need as much time as I can find. But thank you for mentioning that, because we cover a range of topics, more so on the music for film and TV side than the film and TV side. We don't talk to filmmakers as much as we do musicians, but I think it's important that that filmmakers learn about the music side, because music is so incredibly important to any kind of visual media that you're putting out there. Yet it's always kind of been the bastard stepchild of the industry. It's always like the last item on the last line item on the budget. It's almost an afterthought. And what Michael Kruk said was so on the money, that some people who haven't really thought a lot about music or learned a lot about how it's used in picture might assume that they need somebody to score their whole short film or their full-length independent feature, score it end to end, which is probably not going to be the case. Some of it will be scored. Some of it will be licensing songs. For instance, if there's a scene in a bar and you have two people having a conversation, there's going to be music on the jukebox 50 feet away. That music needs to come from somewhere, and it most likely won't come from the scoring composer. There may be a scene where there's a little comedic interlude, and it's something that the scoring composer wasn't asked to do initially, and they realize, oh, we really need music for that after they've had the score done, and now the scoring composer's busy on another project. That's when they would turn to music library music and go, let's find a quirky little dramedy piece to go in that funny scene. So Michael's point was a great point, that you will rarely, if ever, just use one type of music, and don't limit yourself.
Yes, and about your annual event, it is next week. Will you be live, virtual, and what can people can expect, and what will be the venues, because maybe a lot of people would like to be available.
Great. Well, we do an annual event. For 23 years, we've done an event called the Taxi Road Rally, and it's a conference for about 2,500 musicians from all over the world.
Yes.
Obviously, this year we need to do it virtually, and it starts November 6th, 7th, and 8th. But it's only available to people who are Taxi members.
Yes.
And each member gets to invite a guest. So you can go to taxi.com and learn more about it. But I do want to mention that there's a free aspect of it. On November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, in the days leading up to the conference, we're doing a series of prequel classes, which are going to be free and open to everybody in the world. So you can go to taxi.com and click on the tab that says convention and learn more about those. I think we're up to 9 or 10 classes that are about an hour long, and they'll all be free and available to everybody.
Excellent. I have a question here from our viewer. Filmmakers often budget more time resources to the big set pieces versus the rest of their films. Is it possible to spend more music money in some places and keep it cheap in others?
That's actually a really good question, because you know what? Music supervisors that work on big TV shows and big budget feature films would all tell you that they've got a limited budget, and they do exactly that. They will go, okay, I'm really, really dying to have the Rolling Stones song in my film, but I've only got X amount of dollars in my budget. So they might spend a big portion of their budget on that one big song because it's so important to the film, and then use other less expensive resources to do the fill-in music. So that was a great question, and hopefully that answered it.
Yes. I want to thank you very much for joining us live, and thank you very much, Michael Laskow from taxi.com. Wish you all the best on your upcoming event.
Thank you, Sharif.
Waiting to hear some good news. And also I want to thank music composers Michael Kruk and Matt VanderBoegh. I wish you all the best, and I hope to hear more soundtracks and more creativity from your side in your upcoming works. And yes, hope we can meet next year, in a live event, no need to be online. And I wish you all the best. And Khalid is here saying, really glad to have you here with us. Cheers.
Thanks, Khalid. Thank you for the invite, and really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Okay, have a beautiful rest of the day, and all the best.
Thank you, Sharif.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sharif. Good to see you guys.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I'm looking for the button that turns it off.
leave studio. I'll catch you soon, Michael. Lovely to see you.
All right. Likewise. Where's that button that says, oh, I see it down the bottom, leave studio. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Take care. All the best.
Take care, Michael.